because that's what he wanted to hear anyway, was just gobbling it up. Good morning, mushrooms, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers, sisters, mothers, misters, and to all my cousins out there around the world. It's time to plug in and get this train chugging. Dual events last night. The real duel was Trump versus Guthrie. The V, when you see that in court cases like Roe v. Wade, which I think we're going to see down below, if my memory serves me correctly, or in fights or sporting events, that V stands for versus. Those are the two people who are going head-to-head and competing against each other. And we've got some really nice homophones up here, not homonyms. They're not spelled the same, they're homophones. They sound the same. Dual events is the real duel. Same exact pronunciation. Dual events meaning two, and duel meaning two. And in this case, duel means a competition between two people, like they used to do when gentlemen wanted to solve a disagreement. What they would do is say, I challenge you to a duel at dawn. And so they would go out in the street and they'd stand back to back with their pistols, and they would take 10 paces, turn, and shoot at each other to solve their disagreements, because that's so civilized. So the real duel here was Trump versus Guthrie, and that, I'm picking her nose on accident, that was the moderator for his town hall event. He was on with her at the same time as Biden was on with someone else. Let's learn more in the caption below. The president sparred with his moderator. To spar with somebody is like that warm-up practice fighting that you see boxers do before a match, or to practice with their sparring partners. And so they were trading little jabs and stuff, not going for full knockouts, but at the same time, yeah, it was a little bit of a heated exchange from what I understand in the comments. I've not had a chance to watch it yet because it all took place while I was sleeping. As she refused to let him evade questions. He was trying to evade the questions. He was trying to avoid the questions. He was dodging them, moving, shucking and jiving, trying not to give her a straight answer on a lot of the questions she was asking. Because as usual, he just wanted to say what he wanted to say, which is usually not true. He was trying to evade questions while at the same time, in a different place, on a different network, there was a town hall with Joe Biden, and his slower paced town hall meeting was a striking contrast. I don't know why I didn't highlight that, but if something is a striking contrast, you're like, oh my gosh, that's different. If this was black, that was white. If this was pink, that was green, and so on. Speaking of pink and green, there we go. Colors are clashing today here on the news. Enough of that. Let's move on to the next one, because we've got dueling again. Now, of course, as always, lots of words, lots of talkity talk, and you didn't have time to listen or read. So the news has distilled it, boiled it down, reduced it, and condensed it to a few key takeaways from the dueling Trump town halls, which is also useful because if they're both on at the same time, it's very challenging to watch them both. Yeah, so we rely on the news, dependent preposition, in order to keep us abreast of what actually transpired or happened. So, a few key takeaways from the dueling town halls. Well, read the articles. I know I'm going to. I want to see what happened. I might even watch the video. Court packing is the issue, as we've seen here in the headlines with Amy Coney Barrett, and the Republicans trying to force through her appointment just a few weeks here before the general election. I'm not going to get into the whole explanation of the story. There's plenty you can read about it, and I've explained it a bit in past episodes. So, let's move on though. Trump rages at allies, not his allies, but our allies. Our meaning us, aka the US, and of course he's being angry and complaining about our friends and or teammates, our allies. So he rages at allies as the potential October surprises fizzle. Fizzle, yeah, it's such a good word. It's not exactly, well, it is visual vocabulary, but it's also about sound. It's not exactly an onomatopoeia, which is a word that is supposed to sound like the sound that it is describing, but much like a candle. If you've got a candle and it's in that bowl and the wax gets all melty, and as the wick, or the string in the candle, burns down and eventually starts to go down into the liquid wax, it makes that hissing kind of spitting before it eventually then goes out or extinguishes itself. That's to fizzle. And so basically his big October surprises of scandals, conspiracies, or vaccines, or whatever, the big October surprise that's supposed to turn around his chances to win the election, have fizzled. Often goes to fizzle out, because that means it stops burning, or just it doesn't then explode. Much like if you light the wick, that's the string, remember, for some fireworks. Instead of burning and then launching the rocket up and the fireworks exploding into this beautiful display that awes people, wows them, you get the ooh, ah, oh. No, it didn't happen. The fireworks never went off and the wick just kind of fizzled out. There'll be nothing but fizzling going on for the foreseeable future. All right, let's move on. Lots of meat on the bones, gotta keep it rolling. These families, which ones? The ones in the article, obviously. They cherished multi-generational living. If you cherish something, it's something that you embrace and hold tight and you really, really love and appreciate. They cherished multi-generational living. However, COVID-19 has wrecked it because, of course, with the kids going to school and the parents going to work, they are endangering the older members of their family when they come home from being out there in virus land. And so to wreck something, to destroy something, I can imagine that living in a multi-generational setting poses some very distinct challenges that we're not used to dealing with. And it's a terrible thing to think, to come home and see your grandparents. That's a beautiful thing. However, to think that you might be the one responsible for their ultimate demise, I mean, that has to weigh on you pretty heavily. To weigh on you. Vocabulary from earlier this week. You can always check out the past episodes here on Twitch, or then as well recaps on YouTube. However, not all of the words and terms make the cut for the YouTube things. Let's move on. China denies. It's saying, didn't do that, wasn't me, no. Opposite of admit or confess is to deny, saying no, not me, not that, not now, not then, not ever. They're denying coercive diplomacy with Canada and urges the release of the Huawei executive. Coercive diplomacy, or to coerce someone into doing something, or to coerce someone to do something, means that you're trying to push them into doing it. Dare I say, force them into doing it. You're trying to make them do it by taking actions, maybe some economic sanctions, or maybe threatening them with military action. I just used a whole bunch of different verbs with a variety of different complementations. Some go with a preposition and then a gerund. Others go with a full infinitive. And so I suggest you go back through and review so that way you can complement your verbs in an appropriate fashion. Let's move on. The Washington Post says that the White House was warned that Giuliani was being used by the Russians to feed misinformation to Trump. The White House was warned by whom? Probably by the FBI, the CIA, any other number of agencies that do perform these sort of watchdog activities to make sure everything's going on according to plan. They were warned that Giuliani was being used. Ooh, nice. Past, continuous, passive, was being used by the Russians to feed misinformation to Trump. It's almost every day on the show. The prefix mis means incorrect or bad. And so this was incorrect or bad information, and Giuliani was just spoon-feeding it to the president. And of course, Trump, because that's what he wanted to hear anyway, was just gobbling it up. He was wolfing it down. He was eating it up and enjoying it and relishing it, dare I say, cherishing the opportunity to take Putin's position on basically everything. To feed information to somebody, and then they can refuse to eat it, or they can gobble it up. Moving on. Senators surprising hug sparks outrage. As usual on the show, to spark something, the spark is what makes other things happen, usually fire. But it could be spark controversy, spark protest, spark romance. Spark any number of things, that's what makes it start, that's what makes it happen. It ignites, in this case, outrage, rage, extreme anger, out that way. And so anger directed outwards, people are very upset. Why are they upset about people hugging? Hugging is nice. Well, obviously, they're putting each other at risk from the virus. Yes, and so their hug was probably not a bad idea, and some people are angry about that. And the other point I wanted to mention right here is this little S with an apostrophe. Notice the apostrophe is after the S there. That's because it's plural senators, and so by moving the apostrophe outside the plural S, then we know that it, whatever it was, belongs to multiple parties, not one. That's not groundbreaking, but it's also a good little reminder. Let's just keep it rolling, huh? Shall we? I guess that's the business of churches anyway, isn't it? Sorry. Okay. Amy Coney Barrett, that's the Supreme Court nominee that the Republicans are trying to push through, as we've spoken about and alluded to on this broadcast and previous. Her answers were murky, but her conservative philosophy is clear. If something is murky, that means it's not transparent. And when somebody is answering questions in a hearing, giving official testimony before an official panel of people, you want their answers to be transparent so you know what's going on. Her answers were murky, like river water. Yeah, river water is usually full of silt and dirt and mud and things like that, and so you can't see through it. If you hold up your hand in front of your face, you probably wouldn't even be able to see your fingers. And so yes, she has muddied the waters in her responses and or replies. Yeah, so she's not being transparent, and that's something that we should all demand of her if she's going to be serving a lifetime appointment in the highest court of the land. All right, let's move on. What form of communication do cows prefer? I don't know. Please read the article and fill me in. I would appreciate it. I'm probably not going to have time to get around to reading that one. However, we could probably call it communication. Sorry, couldn't help it. A hub, much like a bicycle wheel or any sort of wheel, the hub is that center bit, and then the spokes go outward to the outside rim. And so an airport hub is one of the larger destinations which big international flights or important flights come into, and then smaller regional flights go out of. And so it is that center hub around which the spokes of the regional flights emanate from. These hubs are setting up or creating, building, putting together a quarantine-free travel bubble. Don't really know what that means, but it sounds like a good idea. Anytime you say quarantine-free or bubbles, that makes me happy. Moving on. Look at this guy. I'm on top of the world. He says he's the last person to scale Kilimanjaro's now melting ice cap. Yes, it's a cap, a hat, made of ice on top of the mountain, just like our North Pole and South Pole also have ice caps, which are also melting. To melt, to turn from a solid into a liquid, usually due to a change in temperature. All materials have different melting points or temperatures at which they melt. The snows of Kilimanjaro, as Mr. Hemingway penned in his eponymous novel, are melting and they're disappearing, and it looks pretty cool. But it will be no more. And so he might be the last person to scale it or to climb it. Think about it, an escalator. It helps you go up to scale something, yeah? Lots of different meanings for the word scale, but it's climbing in today's headlines. Let's move on. The ousted WeWork CEO Adam Neumann is back, and unfortunately still hasn't gotten a haircut. He was ousted. To be ousted means to be kicked out or thrown out of your position. He didn't step down voluntarily. He was forced out. He was pushed out. He was fired. He was let go. That's it. But he's back and he's investing in some other sort of real estate venture. Well, we'll see. Let's move on. Packing the Supreme Court is a slippery slope. This is such a good visual phrase, and that visual vocabulary we love so much here on the channel. And there's a slope, like where you go skiing. There's a gradual slope, a steep slope, and either way, slopes are difficult to go up or down, and the last thing you need is for it to be icy, and that is a slippery slope. But when we say something is a slippery slope, it means that it's dangerous territory, because if you take a few steps in that direction, it might have dramatic after effects. It could go very quickly. Like people saying, allowing homosexual marriages is a slippery slope, because what's next? People are going to marry their cat. I could marry that chair or that lamp. And then what's happening to society? It's a slippery slope. Yeah, and so people often overuse this for arguments that aren't even real. However, packing the Supreme Court is a slippery slope because maybe you pack it your way, but then this is, whatever. Read the article. Either way, you shouldn't be packing the courts with people just of your own ideology. It should remain a fair balance of what society, a balanced reflection of the values that are still held by society, not just one group of people that lean in one direction. However, that's just my humble opinion. Whatever. I'm allowed to opine. This is my show. All right. And the Barrett hearings shine a light on, and that's Amy Coney Barrett. As you know, she's the nominee for the Supreme Court that the Republicans are trying to pack to a very strongly conservative-leaning direction. Like 6-3, that's more than a lean. That's packed full of conservative judges. And the hearings, her testimony that she has given, is shining a light on the differences between the two parties. Yes, because, well, the Democrats are asking real questions about her ideological views and legal positions on various arguments. The Republican senators were asking about her daughter's piano lessons and other things, throwing up what we call softball questions because, crack, they're easy to hit out of the park, and if you get hit by it as well, it won't hurt. All right, look at all those headlines. It's been a momentous week. Count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. I'll be on again tonight with the crossword and probably some other bonus programming as well. So I hope to see you there. The crosswords are always a good time. More phrasal verbs, funky vocabulary, and because you have to puzzle it out together with the team, yeah, it tends to stick inside your head. I can't tell you how often we're watching a TV show in the evening or something like that, and we're like, ooh, that's from the crossword, ooh, that's from the news, etc. It's a great way to keep expanding your vocabulary because these words and phrases don't come up just in the news. The grammar, the language is everywhere. Language is everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, for English Otherwise, that was Breaking Down the News. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you do like what we do, please click the like, follow, subscribe, bell notification icon. Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! Pass this along to a friend. Really help them out and help the world out as well. Have a beautiful day and an even better weekend if I don't see you. Bye-bye. Yeah, stop the stream. Come on, you idiot. For real this time.